Hey folks, my guest today is Orr Weiss. He's the CEO and founder of Permit.io and co-maintainer and author of open source opal.ac. He's a serial entrepreneur who's passionate about developer tools, previously founding rookout.com, a leading production debugging solution, and managing Upwards, Israel's largest founders PLG community. Before becoming a founder, he worked as a lead engineer in multiple cybersecurity and big data companies, intelligence corporations, and as a consultant for the Ministry of Defense as a VP of R&D at Netline CT Cyber Division. Or you ready to take us to the top?
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. It's gonna be fun.
You're one of these like super smart ex-Israeli defense guys, huh?
I try my best. I did get an early start, so I started working with software at the age of 5, thanks to my bigger sister. And I got to serve in the intelligence corps in the IDF in 8200, and that's really kind of a runway for acceleration that basically changed my life and is awesome.
So what years, how old are you when you were in the IDF?
So I was between 18 and up to 24. So I served for slightly longer than most. And I started off just as a grunt, and I moved my way up to be an officer and a team lead. But throughout most of my role, I was very hands-on as kind of a software engineer, reverse engineer, et cetera, et cetera.
So what were you doing? I mean, am I allowed to ask questions about what you did at 8200?
Yeah, you can ask about everything, but I'll have to kill you. So,
well, I don't want to die. So is there anything you can share with me that wouldn't get me killed, just to give us a sense of what you were working on?
So actually, it's been more than 7 years since my service, so I can be slightly more open about it. But I obviously can't go into much detail. But I can tell you that I worked a lot in software engineering and cybersecurity, and I can tell you that I had the good fortune of working on projects that were critical for the security of both the state and Israel and other allied nations. I worked on a lot of cases that I described in other talks as working on high stacks and high stakes. For example, I had a situation where I was required to deploy software to production, but people told me you only have 4 attempts to get this right. And if you fail, people would die. So not exactly CI/CD. And obviously a lot of stakes. And I also, in that specific incident, I ended up running into a bug that thwarted our endeavors initially, and we really tore our minds to find where it is, and it ended up being a vulnerability in Windows itself, in the operating system. And I think 7 years later or so, it was announced as a CVE, but before that, it was unknown. So we both had to dive deep into the stack and also handle those high stakes. And those kind of situations, I think, really taught me a lot about taking software to the edge, into the extreme cases, and making the best out of it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, just to be clear, I believe the 1800 unit, that's a part of the Israeli Intelligence Corps. It's also the largest and best known. And really, I mean, this would be the unit that, if I'm making this up, okay, but this would be the unit if another country was trying to launch a cyber attack on Israel, this would be the group that's trying to prevent that cyber attack.
Not just cyber attacks. So 8200 is essentially the equivalent of the NSA. It's just not a civilian body, it's a military entity, but otherwise it's exactly the same. I even got to work a bit with the NSA as part of my service, which is cool. It's very interesting to see the differences between the two. And what's unique about 8200 is it gets its first pick out of the draftees into the IDF, and it's fully independent. It's structured in a way, so if the entire IDF, if the entire state of Israel crumbles to dust, it should still be able to function on its own. And that also creates a lot of interesting mechanics within the organization.
Oh, what's going on there, YouTube? Good to see you guys. Now imagine this. You love watching these interviews with SaaS founders, but imagine if we took all of the valuation data out from over 2,807 interviews I've done manually. Saves you a lot of time. Well, we've done this. We've built it into the beautiful interface inside of FounderPath. Check this out. I'll show you how you can access this in a second, but you log in, you connect your Stripe account, you see your valuation real time. You can see what it changed over the past 88 days and even set goals for valuation this year. Now, the secret to valuation is there's many different ways to value a SaaS business. So the reason you're going to see 3 or 4 different valuations inside of your FounderPath dashboard, this is all free by the way, is because depending on who's doing the buying of your SaaS company, you're going to get a different valuation. A VC is going to pay a different valuation. Private equity firm is different. If you're going to do a minority sale, that's different. And if you sell the whole business, that's a different valuation. You can see all those when I hover over here. Right, so the teal is what a VC would pay, yellow is what private equity, and red is if you sold the whole thing outright. Now, what's cool about this is not built off random data. Again, you guys hear these interviews on YouTube. All these data are built from real-time valuation data points founders share with us on the show. So traction, 1.2 million, seed round, 3.7 raise, they sold 22% of their business. Go in here and filter by the event. Maybe you only want to see companies that have sold the whole business. Well, here are a bunch that have been acquired, the valuation and the multiple. Maybe you're going out right now and you're raising your seed round. Well, go in here and look at all this recent seed deals that went down, what they raised, what valuation they raised at, and what percent that they sold. There's never been a larger data set of SaaS valuations than what you can get now inside of FounderPath, and we're thrilled to bring it to you. All right, we're going to go back to the YouTube video here in a second, but if you want to check this tool out, if you want to jump in and sign up, you can check it out for free to get your valuation at this link, founderpath.com/products/valuations. Or if you go to founderpath.com and hover over products, click on get your valuation here and go ahead and sign up to give it a whirl. Again, all that valuation data live right inside the platform. I hope to see you there. All right, let's jump back into the interview. Yeah, certainly deterrence. That would be even if you take us out, we still exist. I guess last question: if the Prime Minister of Israel is trying to send private communications to another country, you guys would also handle things like encryption of those messages and things of that nature, right?
That's a separate body. So
separate.
So that's actually a difference from the NSA. The NSA is responsible both for securing the infrastructures and intelligence monitoring. The ISNU or 8200 is only responsible for intelligence.
I see. And collecting intelligence.
Yeah, basically just collecting intelligence in a lot of different ways, a lot of different spectrums, a lot of different texts, but just collecting intelligence, which is a lot of work by itself.
I'm getting a sense I can't ask for you to give me an example of some intelligence you collected and how you did it.
Let's see, maybe I can. So there's also things that are kind of open that are as part of the unit. So part of it is something called OSINT, open source intelligence. So just having someone to comb the web, searching through articles, searching for information there. That's also part of the intelligence work done in that unit. But that's, I'd say, definitely the least of it. A lot of the things on the other spectrum, even if I told you, you'd probably think that I'm kind of reading from a science fiction story. I probably shouldn't go into those, but
all right, let's go into permit.
You think it is, it's probably that.
All right, fair enough, and probably worse than anything I could think because that's what's required in today's world. But permit.io. So what are people paying you for? What's the company do?
So it's very straightforward. We allow developers to bake permissions into their products in an easy fashion and in a way that it's future-proof. So they only have to build it once and they don't have to constantly rebuild it. I got to that as in my previous company, Rookout, I ended up rebuilding access control for our product 5 times in a 3-year-old company.
Oh, geez.
And I was like, that's annoying. That's probably 4 times, if not 5 times too many. And we quickly realized that this is common for basically every product. You've seen these interfaces, these capabilities across the space a billion times. Things like user management with the ability to assign roles, API key management, approval flows, the ability to ask permissions from another user, audit logs, the ability to see who did what within the system, the ability for each of the tenants within the system to see that on their own, and invites and impersonation and emergency access. And you've seen all of these things a billion times. And every time you saw them, some poor schlep of a developer had to build them from scratch. And what we're saying is very straightforward. Just like you don't want to build your authentication, just like you don't want to build billing, just like you don't want to build a database, there's no reason that you'll have to build authorization or permissions. So we provide them ready out of the box. You just plug them into your software as an SDK and microservice, and you get interfaces on top, both for yourself as a manager and developer, and both for your customers that want to work with your product. And
So
unless
this
you want to build something, you don't have to.
this use case makes obviously tons of sense. Give me a sense of what you're targeting. SMB, mid-market enterprise. What's the average customer paying per month right now to use the technology?
So we're first of all, we're doing product-led growth and bottom up. So everything is organic as people approach us. So we started with open source, and a lot of companies find us through that. And we target the developers themselves. So it doesn't really matter if you're a developer in a tiny startup or if you're working as part of a team in a larger organization. You're facing really the same pain points, and you need to adopt the technology in a very similar fashion.
But what are they paying? I totally understand the use case here, but I'm curious how you monetize.
So we monetize through a usage-based pricing model. So you pay as you go according to the amount of users that you authorize. So the more users you have, the more you pay. And through that, we really try to align with the top line of both sides. So when your business grows and caters to more customers, you're probably making more money. And so we can share in that win-win kind of situation.
So what's the typical number of seats like a new customer might like start on day one with Permit? Are we talking like 5 seats or like 5,000 seats?
So it really depends. So first of all, it's really important to indicate that these are not seats. So it's not the licenses for your developers. It's for your end users. It depends on how many end users you have as a company delivering a product. And we see everything between several hundreds to tens of thousands at the moment.
Okay, so several hundred. I'm just playing with the slider on your pricing page. Several hundred. So 5,000 monthly active users would be about $1,000 per month.
Yeah, and first of all, what we do have for like 1,000 users, 1,000 monthly active users, that's still within our free quota, which is important to indicate. And yeah, but as you grow or as you move to other tiers because you need more features, yeah, you pay according to that pricing tier and slider.
Okay, fair enough. Give me more of the backstory here. What year did you launch the company in?
So we got started basically a year and a half ago. We bootstrapped for a year. So my co-founder and I worked in garage mode, but not in a garage because I don't have a garage. And we initially started by working with design partners and just delivering the SaaS offering to them, kind of a bit more hand-holding. Then as part of the service we built, we had a microservice, a component that synced the application with the authorization layer with the application itself. We decided to export that as an open source project, and that's what's called Opal today, which you mentioned kind of in the opening brief. And while Opal is a rather young project, it's not even a year old. It's already being used in production in amazing companies like Tesla, Zapier, Accenture, and others. And we have a rather large community of developers in Slack.
What's large? How many?
We're getting close to 300 people on Slack.
Okay, and why is that? Like, I mean, I have a Slack group with 1,800 people in it, but 99% of them never say anything. So why do you use the number in Slack as the success metric?
So it's not that you asked for the number. I said what I was trying to emphasize is the amount of people that are engaging with the community, that are asking questions. And you'd find several per day asking questions.
I see. Got it. So 300 in the group, several actively engaging. How many? I mean, isn't the right question with any open source project, how many developers have contributed at least one line of code in the past 12 months?
No, so that's definitely a good indicator, but it's not necessarily the most important one because there's a difference between contributing and using. And
what's most important for you?
For me, the using part.
I see.
Because that the using and asking for features that really teaches me on what the market needs and how the problem space looks in the details of it. So for example, when Tesla came in and they asked for more features and capabilities to take this to production, there was a shitload of information, pardon my French, that really got us to understand how this would look in greater scales and in more infrastructure complexity than we necessarily see ourselves with the smaller players.
So how many Teslas are there today? How many installs?
So it's not It's not installed on a Tesla. It's part of their fleet management solution. So
No,
it's
no,
a
no. Or I'm asking, that's an example. How many companies like Tesla have installed an instance
are
of
using
Opal?
the open source.
Yeah.
I'd say at least five that I know of, but since it's open source, maybe more. I
Okay,
don't
I
have
see.
we don't have full visibility on who installs this. Just put the code online and anyone can take it.
So you're watching, I think this is super smart. You go from agency to open source to five like large companies like Tesla, Zapier installing the thing, using it. You're learning from that feedback loop. Are you still
Mhm.
pre-revenue then today? You haven't started
So
charging yet?
we've started some early revenue. So we launched our SaaS offering as kind of open to everyone as part of our announcement of coming out of stealth a month ago.
Ah,
And we now have we're getting close to a dozen customers heading to production and
okay.
moving.
Does that mean they're paying?
So that means that they're a step before pay.
I see. Okay, but it doesn't have basically raise your hand and said, I'm willing to pay for these things. And you're said,
Yeah,
okay,
we're
we'll get you
already
launched in
in.
60 days.
Some of them are large corporations, and they already sent us through procurement,
I see.
going
I
through
see.
security questionnaires, going through the compliance parts. Yeah, so
Okay.
it's almost there, and I'm actually kind of bewildered that we were able to do that in a bit over a month.
But so again, you generated revenue through some other things, some agency work, some custom work. You're learning through some of the
The,
things you're signing with these
the
things. But
agency
you're
aspect,
but you're pre SaaS revenue today. You just launched it a month ago.
there's very early revenue from like the design partners, but
Of
that's
course. Yeah.
yeah.
This is a very smart, I think a lot of folks starting out, I would say, are very experienced with startups. For those of you listening that are new to startups, like this whole idea of going and launching an agency and then signing up design partners who are prepaying for a product roadmap and then turning the design partners into your first SaaS customers is like really a smart way to build a SaaS business. Or it makes sense, the strategy here.
Thank you. I'd like to emphasize that the agency play is not really an agency. Like we don't charge them for the service or professional services, but it is a way to interact with them professionally and learn from what they need and get to product market fit. And then as a follow up to that, to go to market fit.
Yep. Now, are you still bootstrapping today or have you raised capital?
We've raised a 6 million seed round in July.
Okay. So last year did a 6 million seed. Fairly large, I would say fairly large seed round, even by today's standards for a pre-revenue company. But your background probably, I mean, it makes sense why you would get that. Did you price that round or was that on a note?
It was completely a safe.
A say, okay, uncapped safe.
No, it was. It's a capped safe, but
So how do you? I guess my question to you is most pre-seed rounds are right. Like at a stage you were doing, it's going to be $1 million on a safe with a 5 cap. You obviously didn't do a 5 million cap because you raised 6 million. So how do you come up with the right
that
cap?
would be a very bad idea to do.
Yeah.
So what was the question? Sorry.
How do you guys come up with a cap? Right, raising 6 million on a note or safe.
You start by wetting your finger and waving it in the air and getting a gauge from that, and the rest of it is negotiation, like everything else in the market.
Yep.
So you try to get a sense of what you can get for this, and then in negotiation, you move a bit to the left, a bit to the right. But honestly, I wasn't optimizing for the valuation. I was optimizing for the players I want to work with and the types of relationships I want to have with the ongoing longer journey of the company. And I think in some parts of it, I decided to opt for a lower valuation to work with people that I wanted.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That's why anyone should raise all the time. It should be to bring strategic partners in. But most folks, dilution's a real thing you have to manage. Most folks are selling, 15 to 20% of the business in their pre-seed or seed round. Were you sort of in that same range?
50% of their business, if you're doing
50%.
15. 15. Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
I think
I'm just curious, were you sort of in that same range as everyone else, right? 15 to 20%.
Yeah, slightly better, but
okay, so slightly better would be you raised 6 million and you were able to get away with selling less than sort of 15%, effectively at whatever that cap would be. So the cap would be something like 20 million, 25 million, something like that.
Yeah, I'd rather not go into the full details, but yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so where are you using that capital? Why'd you need that much capital to build this?
So I'd say two main outlets, let's call it. One is to get the right people and to build something for developers that is such a critical part of infrastructure and affects both the software development cycle and the security posture of an organization, you really need to get this top notch. And you need to build top notch things. You need top notch people. So we don't skimp on the people that we bring and how we connect them to the organization. So that's one, and that's basically classic. And the other part is buying enough focus time. So with a product-led growth motion, your focus, and we were actually getting luckier than we expected, but in general, the best practice is to allow yourself the time to grow organically with the market and focus on capitalization and sales only later down the funnel.
So how many years or months of runway did 6 million buy you based off your projections?
A bit over 2 years.
Like a bit over 2 years. Got it. And by the way, my valuation math was wrong a second ago. If you sold less than 15%, it would have been something more like a 6 on a 40 cap. But point being, you brought in good strategic partners. You bought yourself thinking time for 2+ years.
It's more than just thinking time. It's time to kind of adjust and learn the product market fit, but also allow things to grow. I'll give you an example from another company, a successful company, Sneak, which I also happen to be a ambassador for, which is a cute kind of title. Sneak took about almost a bit over 2 years to get to 1 million ARR, which is considered slow if you think classic enterprise slaves. But 2 years later, they were already a multi-billion-dollar company. So the hockey stick there is very steep. And
I get it. We see stories all the time. I mean, Sid at GitLab, you could follow in his shoes, right? Very similar patterns here. So I'm not discrediting this strategy. I'm just trying to understand what strategy you're pursuing. It makes sense to me. How many
growth first? That's the point.
Yeah, growth. Yeah, PLG growth first. Totally understand that. You want to get that 5 install base up to 500,000, 5 million, and then sort of go from there. What's the team size today? How many folks full time?
So we're now 13, actually 14. And we'll grow to around 16 immediately. And that's what I'm kind of calling cruising altitude.
All right, 16 to cruising altitude. Or we're exciting story here. We're out of time, but let's in the meantime wrap up with the famous 5. Number 1, favorite business book.
I'll give you something that's not exactly a business book, but I use a lot of metaphors from it for business. And it's my favorite book in general, The Selfish Gene by Richard Dawkins. It's a book that basically explains what life is and how it's geared towards to move forward and what evolution is. And I constantly find equivalencies in both business and software development.
Number 2, is there a CEO you're following or studying?
I am an avid admirer of the Collison brothers at running Stripe. It's just astounding to see the behemoth that they were able to build.
Number 3, what's your favorite online tool for building Permit besides your own?
Online tool to build Permit, you say?
Just something you use, yeah.
Yeah, I'd say currently it's GitHub Copilot. I'm astounded not only by how good it is by delivering code, but also documentation. Like I start to write the documentation as part of an MD file, and it gives recommendations for the content of the documentation that is slightly better than what I had in mind. So that's powerful on a lot of angles.
Yep. Okay, great. Number 4, how many hours of sleep are you getting every night?
I try to get at least 6, and sometimes I'd say I'd average at 7.
And what's your situation? Or married, single, kids?
Married, no kids yet.
No kids yet. All right. And how old are you?
I'll be 36 in July.
Very cool. Happy early. Well, you still got a little ways. So 35 years old. Last question. Something you wish you knew when you were 20.
Something I wish I knew when I was 20. That's a very good question. I think if you pace yourself, you can learn a lot more things by gradually than by running yourself forward into the wall, which I think I've done too much.
Guys between 18 and 24, he was cutting his teeth in the IDF unit 8200. You know what that unit does. He then got into some product led stuff and said, you know what, I hate building the same thing over and over. He's now trying to solve that problem for a lot of people. He's right now, Zapier's using it, Tesla's using it. It's called Permit.io. Well, Permit.io is on top of an open source platform that he's built, which is gaining traction. To buy himself time to learn and pivot appropriately, they raised 6 million at, call it somewhere around a 40 million cap, sold less than 15% of the business last year. Now 13 strong, trying to go to 16 to get to cruising altitude to keep building out this open source platform. We will see what happens next. Or thanks for taking us to the top.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
One more thing before you go. We have a brand new show every Thursday at 1 p.m. Central. It's called Shark Tank for SaaS. We call it Deal or Bust. One founder comes on, 3 hungry buyers. They try and do a deal live, and the founder shares back-end dashboards, their expenses, their revenue, ARPU, CAC, LTV, you name it, they share it. And the buyers try and make a deal live. It is fun to watch every Thursday, 1 p.m. Central. Additionally, remember, these recorded founder interviews go live. We release them here on YouTube every day at 2 p.m. Central. To make sure you don't miss any of that, make sure you click the subscribe button below here on YouTube, the big red button, and then click the little bell notification to make sure you get notifications when we do go live. I wouldn't want you to miss breaking news in the SaaS world, whether it's an acquisition, a big fundraise, a big sale, a big profitability statement, or something else. I don't want you to miss it. Additionally, if you want to take this conversation deeper and further, we have by far the largest private Slack community for B2B SaaS founders. You want to get in there. We've probably talked about your tool if you're running a company or your firm if you're investing. You can go in there and quickly search and see what people are saying. Sign up for that at nathanlatka.com/Slack. In the meantime, I'm hanging out with you here on YouTube. I'll be in the comments for the next 30 minutes. Feel free to let me know what you thought about this episode. And if you enjoyed it, click the thumbs up. We get a lot of haters that are mad at how aggressive I am on these shows, but I do it so that we can all learn. We have to counter those people. We got to push them away. Click the thumbs up below to counter them and know that I appreciate your guys' support. All right, I'll be in the comments. See ya.